Hello, Rob.
Hey, Frode, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm okay. I'm uh deep into investigating hearing aids.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, I have some and I hate them.
Have you tried using the AirPods Pro as hearing aids?
No, because they keep falling out.
Oh, okay. Have you tried bigger buds? They have
I've
good-
I've, I've tried all kinds of stuff. They're okay if I sit still, but if I move around, they fall out.
oh,
So I think I signed up for a phone meeting with somebody about eargos. They fit inside.
that's good.
Uh, yeah, I don't know. They're all kinds of, but they're expensive. And there's another kind that's very cheap, and they look like they're about the same. I want to find out if my insurance will cover it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
No, I can't. Uh, I can't get this on full screen.
Morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Morning, Deanie.
Hey, Rob. Hey, Mark. Hey, Andrew.
The agenda is now linked in our chat. A not very unexpected agenda, I might add.
Hey,
This is completely different. Oh, here it is. Oh, there. All right.
So, shall we give it another 3 minutes, maybe?
oh,
I'm
good
not,
idea.
not sure who we're waiting for today, actually, but oh yeah, Danny, do you have a time to suggest to Fabienne for tomorrow? I mean Friday?
May I ask a favor? Can we do it Monday in the morning at 7 o'clock my time?
Yeah, I'll send him a
Ask him if
message.
that works. I really need Friday to write. I need a full writing day. Tomorrow I've got 28 students coming from high school for the day. I lost Thursday. So did Andrew. Andrew's my sidekick in crime here.
Andrew, a life
He's
of
teaching a
crime.
he's teaching a twine workshop in the morning, and then that afternoon he and Holly are going to help me monitor the retro game lab that we set up.
Okay, I'm using the new Delta chat to send him a message.
The new what? I'm sorry. What?
Delta chat, the alternative to texting that we experimented with on Monday a little bit.
Okay.
It's quite cool. Okay, all right. Oh no, okay, we'll have another minute or two. Anybody have any smaller issues before we start properly?
Frode, I never received a message about the secret access to the apps in the Vision
Test flight. He's talking about test flight.
test flight. Yeah.
Okay, I will try to do that again. I've deprioritized it a little bit, so we're not developing a lot, but it should have a new version relatively soon. So I'll make sure that you are there for that.
Okay.
Thank you for telling me about that.
It's
Badini, I just put the Delta chat link in the sidebar.
Well, are we using Delta Chat? Is it better
I
than
know it was something Leon showed us on Monday, and uh, Fred's dived in and given it a go. It's not something we all have to be using, but it's just that was just explaining what it is.
okay.
It's just for me when I text people who don't use iPhones, it costs quite a lot, especially with Leon because he's in Hungary. So this is not an exchange for Slack or email or Twitter or X or Facebook or Instagram. It's just more. It's just more. We need more. The gimmick is that they use our email addresses. So that's good. Well, at least we own our IDs. That was kind of the cool side of it.
We need fewer.
Yeah. We do need fewer, but it is a bit hilarious at this point in time when, did you get my message? What? Did you email it to me? No, I texted it. Oh yeah, replied on Slack. I really haven't seen it. Why don't you WhatsApp it to me? Those routines are always, they're currently classics. Currently classics.
I'm also discovering that Apple products sometimes stop working. Like a friend of mine cannot do FaceTime from the computer. All of a
Wow.
sudden,
Why?
won't work.
I've heard of that one.
The Apple ecosystem is full of invasive species, I think.
Could be. Can't trust it,
No,
I've
trust.
I've certainly had something similar for a long time in that if somebody sort of calls me, it rings on my phone. It rings on about two iPads in the house and on my Mac. But then whichever device I answer on it, Apple then doesn't want to use that and thinks I'm using some other device. But I've never found there'll be a configuration somewhere that allows you presumably to tell it to act sensibly, but I haven't found where it is.
Yeah, that was the one thing my father never understood about these calls. That it's not to a device, it's to an ID, and you can be logged in many places. And that was the thing. Right. Before we dive into this wonderfulness, we have any other items or announcements, rather, is what I meant to say. I'm sorry.
Good morning from brunch. I'm dropping a URL in. Here's my Hello World in VR. Have a look at it with your headsets.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, thank you. We will do that. We can put that on the agenda. And so paper-wise, I'm having a hard time with my human one. All the other papers are done, right?
Working on the human one too, adding references. And I sent you a whole stream of emails about the errata and the digital library. So if you can get a chance to have a look at them and let me know what you think.
There's absolutely no chance in heaven on earth that I'm going to look at ACM's errata systems. That is delegated to the genius of Mark Anderson. If I look at that, my head will fall off. It is far outside my wheelhouse, capacity, etc.
Well, just the basic
It's
question
interesting.
just the basic question is whether or not we point to those specific examples of errata in the human paper, or just simply allude to the class of problems without citing the exact specific cases where we can point to them having slipped through the safety nets. So that's the question.
Yeah, I mean, I pointed out so Peter raised some of these points, and my sort of thing and probably in my back to him was just saying that, I mean, one of the things I've discovered is, I mean, an issue is that certainly ACM has no staff member who is formally tasked with dealing with errata, so it has no system. So,
Oh Lord.
so
Organization.
But this came up because I sort of wrote to them. I'd found that it was Halatz's second sort of go at the 7 issues thing, which he did as a keynote for Hypertext 91, I think it was. But at the time, people weren't putting the keynotes in the proceedings, so there was no referenceable entry for something was known to have happened. And in fact, there wasn't a record of the talk, which luckily I found thanks to a retired librarian at Texas A&M who kindly dug out a copy. And I sent that back to ACM saying, look, this would be useful for future scholars. Its provenance is not in doubt. And the answer was, well, I don't have a template for this, so essentially no. So it's a bit of a problem. But in that way, the whole citation thing is slightly broken. I mean, as someone was saying to me, reminding me today that research is mainly done by academics who want to get promoted. So once you put your paper in, who cares if it's accurate or not? Will be a cynic's view, and that's. I mean, it's not as it should be, but that's often why the whole errata thing doesn't work. So unless you've sent something really heinously wrong to something like Nature, in which case everyone wants to complain about it. But for the lower level stuff, errata just seem to be unfixable
Yeah.
in many cases.
Right. So on that note, or rather completely changing the topic, any other announcements? I have nothing today. I'm trying to do the structure, text, and author that I've been working for a few days is still not finished. I look forward to showing you guys so you can test what it's done. In author for vision, there's a bar stuck at the top of the screen, which is really annoying. And I haven't been able to fix it yet. So Apple's introducing fixes and bugs, as is classic. Dini, Fabian just texted, that's good. On my
That's
day.
good. Okay, great, perfect. I'll put it on my schedule. Thank you.
Do you want to do it on this channel and I'm there as well, at least in the beginning, or do you want?
Absolutely, we do it at your channel. We just follow your normal link.
Fine. Okay, cool. Right. So everybody, headsets on. We have Andrew demo. I've already done it, and it's very interesting, and I look forward to everyone's comments. I saw, Andrew, that in your video that you made on Quest, there's the same issue with the, just going to tap to get in, the system dot appearing.
Yeah, it seems to be in the same spot as the vision, which is a good sign. They're going towards consistency already.
So,
It doesn't trigger by touching it. It triggers by pinching the offhand. Is that the same on the vision?
on the vision, I got to look at it, and then I got to touch it. But so the surprise is, hang on, let me just go out for a second. Yeah, it is on both hands. Sorry. Yeah, you have to look at it and pinch.
So I would assume we should be fine, unless, of course, it starts. Oh wait, do you look at it and pinch with the other hand? Is that what you're telling me?
No, can you see me?
I can see you, yeah.
Right. So I'm in
What
the
universe
environment.
were you going to?
So I'm in the environment now, and here,
Right.
so I have to pinch it to activate.
Okay, perfect. So it's the same gesture as on the Quest. So it should be okay, as we don't have like our menu buttons sort of overlapping it just for visuals, because it shouldn't trigger by accident.
I completely agree with you, but it's something to be aware on. And on here, when you turn your hands on the vision, anyway, you'll test it in vision as well soon, right? So you'll.
Yeah, it sounds like it's the same function as on the Quest. So
It's really cool, the node-based system. I think we need to experiment with this.
I will say, on like the ring finger, they're definitely not in the right place for ease of use because sometimes the nodes get a bit close to the middle finger, and that's just because I sort of copied and pasted the layout from the index to all the other fingers just for the test because I wasn't too worried about them being unique. But when if we go this route and design it intentionally, of course, each hand would have its own sort of node structure that would match what it contains rather than just being the same thing every time.
Where do I navigate to, guys? I have my browser open, headset on.
You go to the Future of Text lab.info.
Okay, Future of Text Lab .info. Okay, Future Text Lab.info. Live XR experiences.
Yeah, you click on that, and then when the next page, you see it says current live. That's where Andrew will also be putting the current version.
Okay, enter VR.
Is this code Future of Text Lab?
Sorry, what?
I have HTTPS code.future text lab.
Yes,
It's in the
yes,
in the
that's right.
browser.
That's right, yeah.
So when I select it, nothing happens.
When you select what?
The address. It
Okay,
just
I just see some
puts the cursor in
Okay.
giant
there.
lines shooting across the sky right now.
Okay, Peter, hold on one quick second. Just addressing Rob's issue. So, Rob, okay, why don't you try to go to the main page of Future Text Lab?
Yeah, I don't know how to do that.
Click on the FTL logo. Peter,
Yeah.
you should be able to tap on that sphere and then enter Andrew's environment.
Okay, I guess I'm inside of a sphere and I see like shooting stars going across the sky in all directions.
Andrew, does it look like he's inside or about to enter?
Yeah, so it sounds like he's probably inside the library view. Peter, do you see any hands in front of you? Like if you put your hands in front, are there hands or no?
No hands.
Okay, so what
Hands
happened?
controller.
I don't have a limit on it yet, so a user can technically join as soon as the page loads, but it has to load stuff in the
Okay,
background.
wait, I see hands
So,
now.
oh, okay,
Okay.
perfect.
When I tap
Yeah,
my controllers together, everything suddenly flashed into place.
Oh, yeah.
perfect.
No controllers in here. Good point.
Okay, so I'll put my controllers on the side.
Oh God.
Okay.
Okay, Rob, if you type in futuretextlab.info and start again, that might be easier for you.
Yeah. Just it doesn't track my eyes very well.
It is highly variable for me as well.
Okay. Just do that.
Ah,
That
it
can
is.
work.
Yeah.
I've got a window that says private browsing.
That's not what you want.
Oh, okay. Let's see. Can I click that? No, it selects it. Ah,
I think what we're witnessing here is what I consider the primary challenge of XR at the moment. Controls are not that brilliant. So thank goodness we're working on that.
Yeah, it seems to me you need a way that basically you can load a whole lot of people into a common something that just overrides all the things you normally go through. Just said, right, you're all going to go to this space configured in this style, so you'll at least have the same starting point.
uh, telling me to move back. I'm too close to the object, but I'm not. I have no objects, so
Are you sure it says object and not the display?
it put the keyboard up in the space in front of me, which I don't want.
So, Mark, what is your impression?
I'm finding this almost unusable.
So it was mine.
Impression so far?
So I can see everything. Where I am at the moment is so I can see all the papers. Like the grabbing and moving of things seems really nice, easier than before, and I like the sort of just a little dot.
The hand gestures.
Oh, I can see those. Yep, I can see those and experimenting with those. My main problem is that I still haven't worked out how you control the reading distance control and how you move the menu
Mark,
bar.
those aren't things for today. What Andrew has
Yeah,
worked
but I
on.
need them in order to get the thing at the right distance. So, I mean,
Mark,
this is another problem that it goes
Mark,
back to your
let
point.
me,
If you
let me just
can't,
explain.
let me finish. If you can't open in the right place, you can't then do the things you're trying to do.
This is today's work that Andrew's done is not to open anything. It's just to look at your hand, quite literally. It's just a hand.
Oh, okay. But yes, I can see that.
Okay, I see my hand now. Thumb, index, middle. I see a little floating menu thing, ring and pinky.
Where has my
Okay.
My wrist did.
I'm just muting you, Peter, just for a second. Rob, where are you now? What can you see? How far have you gotten?
I'm in it. I've got the hand. I've got the index, middle ring, and pinky thumb, and the little dot on the end of the finger on the right hand. So I'm in it.
So Andrew, am I right in saying the question for today is how does it feel to have the controls on the hands? And should we have nodes sticking out? And if so, how many? And those kinds of questions, right? Do you want to maybe phrase it more
Yeah.
suited to you?
So the first thing that, like just to go bare basics, does it feel natural to turn your palm towards you to have the menu open? I would say yes, because that's what the both Quest and Vision OS are doing for their menus. So I think that's become kind of a standard. So I guess the first question we need to ask is, okay, we have this sort of unique node system where you point with the dot and kind of like navigate through it almost like a maze. Does that feel nice to interact with? Um, and then does it make sense? If we agree that yes, it does, then we would further discuss what goes on each finger. And if we decide, no, this doesn't feel good, then we'll try to figure out how to fix those issues. One thing that might be worth testing if people haven't read the sort of update log, when you get to the end of a node path and you see a node with a white center, those are selectable. So you can pinch it and it will trigger a function. In this case, all it does is it just sort of prints out some text that reads the function you triggered. But of course, we could do anything we want with them. So see how that sort of interface feels. See if you can imagine yourself getting used to the muscle memory of just quickly navigating down a path you want for ease of use and things like that. And sort of be thinking, would you want the nodes further apart? Would you want them closer? All of those things.
Quick reaction, I like it.
Andrew, I think it's
That's good.
wonderful.
I'm glad.
Yeah, I think it's very, very useful. I have a few thoughts on that. I'm not sure if we should use all the fingers, and we shouldn't go too far out. I think we should maybe keep thumb and pinky as quick action fingers, because I hope we'll get to a point where the user doesn't have to look at their hands for some of the commands. I don't know necessarily what they should be, but it's fun to follow the nodes. But it's a little more work than touching your fingers.
Yeah, but it would be a way to get more than just 5 buttons. I wonder, say, what if quick actions was its own menu? So say thumb is quick actions because it's off on its own, and you have lots of space above it to put tons of different like node options that muscle memory could easily find without you looking. So thumb is the quick actions that always change, and then the other 4 fingers are more consistent. I don't know, just throwing that out there.
Yeah, something to think about. But
Just
also,
thumb is definitely unique.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. So looking at this, what I'm thinking about is for the demo today, it is very, very impressive. I think that over time, when you get used to this, to have text floating off the fingers is going to be a bit intrusive. Do you think that the labels can be on the fingers rather than off the fingers?
What do you mean like on the fingers? Like mapped?
Yeah,
Like how would that, how are you picturing that?
like the screenshots that I mocked up, where it says it on the finger.
Mm.
I'll show you.
Right, but I mean the fingers can move. I know the screenshot you're
Yeah.
talking about, Fred.
Yeah.
But say you bend your finger, what happens to the text?
Yeah.
Well, it can be mapped or it could be in front
Would
of.
you want it, would you want the text to kind of bend with the finger, or would you want it to stay flat and kind of hover above it? How are you picturing that working?
I think that highlights another issue, which is when you're looking at this, you wouldn't want to bend your finger. But if you are, let's say you're just talking and you're emphasizing with your hands like this, you may not necessarily want any of this to spawn. So maybe we need to have a kind of a spawn point because it comes up very quickly. And when you're choosing menu items, you wouldn't want to, there would be no, under current logic, there wouldn't be any reason to bend your fingers, right?
Yeah, you wouldn't need to. It is quite fun having everything kind of like wiggle around with your hand. But yeah, there's no like actual use for it that I can think of.
Well,
I
fun
wonder,
is very important, Andrew. So that's a good point.
One thing about removing labels, um, it's a very valid discussion, but also we're so early on, and nobody who uses this system is going to be proficient in it. I really wouldn't worry about putting a lot of time into making things for the expert user because we won't have any of those. And it's just kind of wasted development time. That's just my thoughts on it. I'd rather make it as streamlined as possible for the beginner user.
I think that's right, but I think we also want to let people know because there's the people that review this are going to be the expert users and they're going to say, hey, this stuff is, not working the way we want it to work. So I think when we present this, we want to say that exactly, that our methodology focused on novice users in advance. And then we can add a little blurb about if we, to make this more robust for expert users, we would do this, 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 and this. So it shows them what we want to do, but didn't just because we're not producing for those people. Rob?
Right. Like it's very easy to have a setting that just turns off the labels on the hand once you like know the menu.
Rob's got his hand up.
I have a question. Is it possible to see both the screen with the Zoom meeting and be inside that? Because you're basically blind when you're in there with your hands and all the text.
From what I understand, WebXR takes over the screen entirely. So it doesn't let you overlay other windows inside of it that I know of. That would be a nice feature in the future. Not something I have control over. That'd be at an OS level.
Interesting, because I know I'm on the Oculus and Rob isn't. But if I because I'm basically sitting in a seated boundary. If I lean forward or back, that actually just gently drops me out of into pass through, and I can see the screen. So that's a sort of doesn't really answer your question, but that's a way to fudge it, at least on the Quest for now. And a couple of observations to Andrew. Really like this. There was no sort of sense of what's it all doing when I looked at the fingers. I did an interesting proprioception test because I touched the end of my finger correctly, though the system fingers seem to be about half a knuckle shorter than the actual fingers. Not that bothers me, but I thought that was an interesting little wrinkle.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. If you're still going.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, it was something I was not expecting to discover, but it becomes very obvious that the hands are not our hands once you start trying to touch them. And that is why I have the sort of node circles floating off the finger a ways, because touching will technically work with this setup, but it's not exactly where we think it should be. So having it navigate this way just sort of worked better after some testing.
I mean, it was obvious once I saw what was going on. So again, the circles help, and that's all fine. I like the way that when I rotated my hand slightly, the expansion menus were rotating. The only thing I sort of noticed, and this is I hesitate to say it because it sounds like critique, but that's not really my thing. Is that on the pinky finger, the first option sits over the end of the because the ring the pinky finger is shorter, so much shorter. But that's partly down to if you're holding your hand. Sorry, if you're holding your hand up like that, it doesn't really matter. I happen to start sort of I thought I'll look at my hand, and the way I held it was horizontally like that. So the option one draws there. But it's, that again, don't take that as critique. That's just an observation.
No, that's actually super important. I noticed that too. I also hold my hand horizontally like you do when I use the menu. And the reason why I didn't fix it is because it honestly takes quite a while to move the nodes around. And I just copied and pasted them. I got the one working for the index finger and the thumb because those were both unique. And then I was like, I'm running out of time. And I copied and pasted it to all the other fingers. So when we actually design it, it wouldn't have the same layout. It would be actually configured to go down more for the index finger and vice versa.
Sure. I mean, yeah, indeed, it's implementation detail without making that sound trivial. Yes.
The vision, I could lean forward to the screen and and see the screen. So it does let you do that, but it blanks out almost immediately.
But your comment this morning or last night early about the way the Apple Vision Pro has kind of absconded with one space that we wanted. Are you imagining a way to around that problem? I also want to say I'm not even sure we're producing for the Apple Vision Pro anymore. We're focusing mostly on Quest.
Oh, why do you feel we're focusing more on Quest?
Because the Apple company's not doing much in the way of building out the Vision Pro. I mean, it's kind of stymied.
Well, they just released version 2.0 of the operating system 6 months after release, so that's kind of a good investment.
Well, I mean, did you watch the videos for the World Development Conference?
Mhm.
There's hardly any money going into the Apple Vision Pro. They're going to release a cheaper version, but they're not doing anything to update the current version.
Point of isn't coming out until the fall.
I mean, I don't, okay, I mean, either way, I don't think it matters much because as far as we're concerned, the systems are identical. Once you're in WebXR, you know, whether you have this headset or that, it shouldn't matter much, but the
Well,
performance.
it does if it takes over one of the spaces that we're imagining to design for.
It's exactly the same on the Quest. The space, the dot comes up exactly the same on the Vision and on the Quest. So the point was really, you know, when you look at your hand in the Quest as well, it produces that kind of a thing. So I think what Andrew said is makes sense. It doesn't obscure. I was surprised though that it came up on both hands. So what are you saying here, Andrew?
Oh, nothing important. That's why I put it into the chat. But
Oh,
I
Andrew,
was basically just
have you not tried
pointing
the
that out.
Vision recently? It's been quite a few weeks. The resolution of WebXR on the Vision is flawless now.
Oh, did it catch up? Well, that's
Yeah.
perfect then. Yeah, I haven't
Oh,
tested it since before the trip to Canada.
it's far surpassing anything else. It is absolutely flawless.
Oh, perfect. Then in that case, it sounds like both the headsets are at the same place.
Yeah.
And we're back to we can demo on whichever one we want. That's good.
Another interesting one for you, Andrew. So, a couple of interesting things I just did. So, putting my headset back on, I managed to change the hand. So this time, when I press the pinky finger, the extension draws back over the hand. Understood for all the reasons you've just mentioned. So, in other
Yep.
words, at the moment, that's fine. And the other thing is that I keep getting the menu bar. I turned it on and managed to seem to turn on the debug with my nose as far as I could work out. But I now know how to turn it off using the wrist tap, so that's fine.
Yeah, that debug menu is really obnoxious if you're trying to use it. It needs to be reworked, and I'm looking forward to getting rid of it once we have the finger menus working. But yeah, it's still there for now. At least debug is kind
Yeah,
of
no,
interesting.
it's because I know we're not looking at it today. Yeah, the interesting is not yet figuring out how I could move the menu bar. So having activated it. So if it's something we're sort of sticking with as a general notion, it's that I assume that I'd be able to somehow effectively grab the menu bar and move it to where it was pertinent. I assume, I don't know whether it's being turned on effectively relevant to its where the control point, in other words, so I tap on my wrist and where it turns up or disappears is where my wrist was in the environment. I don't know
Yeah,
if that's the case.
it's a little confusing. It's basically tapping your wrist, it appears relative to your headset and the direction you're looking. So it will always kind of be in your lower vision wherever your head is looking, whenever you tap it. So you can't like move it. That would be really nice. We stopped development on it a long time ago, and
No,
it's
no,
just
that's
kind of
fine.
been a
Yeah.
relic. But yeah, very good points. If we decide to keep it for any strange reason, those would be
Sure.
things we'd have to visit.
Yeah.
I did something and they switched hands and they look like skeletons.
Yeah, sometimes if you like close the window and open it back up, the headset gets confused and swaps the hand tracking, and then you get that. It's just kind of a known WebXR quirk. In general, I don't think people are going to be doing that. But it's always safe to just have a fresh reload whenever you hop in and out.
So I understand, Energy. So you're saying that I just assumed it was something to do with which sort of hand was just sort of detected first or something. So
Yeah,
you're
that's
actually
it.
saying that it's more just a quirk of the WebXR at the moment.
It is a quirk, and it's because of what you said, where it whichever hand it detects first, but it will end up doing that. So if you hop in and it's detected the left hand first, left hand is non-dominant because that's how it assigns the first one. And then you can work in it like normal. You take it off, you move the headset around, you put it back on, and now it detects the right hand first. Well, it gets
Yeah.
confused, so it puts the right hand as non-dominant, finds the left hand, is like, wait, that's the left hand, and then swaps the hands, and they get inverted. It's really silly,
Can
but
you
I
guys
don't
see?
really have any control over that.
Oh, sorry. Can you guys see my screen?
Yeah.
Yes.
So we do have some additional issues. Hang on, my left hand isn't rendering. Let me just enter it again. So, as it should be, hang on, moving cable. You can all see how beautiful the hand with the dots move, right? But if I
Yes.
now, if I now make the mistake of looking at my right hand before I point, this happens. You see the time 4:36 come up? Because
Yes.
if I forget my left hand, so my right hand now, the way it works on Vision, I think it's similar on Oculus, but you look at the palm and you get a dot, but only if you look at it. When you pinch, it goes to the desktop, as you know. But then let's go back in. There's an additional wrinkle we need to keep in mind, and that is if I look at it and I move my hand around, it turns into the little widget. So if I now want to point, this thing floats with me.
Yeah, that's a little bit annoying. Is that something you can toggle off in the settings? So when we demo this for people, we would just have it disabled?
No, we can't
Hmm.
because that system. However, we need to look at what is on the other hand because if it can be quite quick, like this works just beautifully. Now that I know there is toggles for that, what we may do, I think, is maybe we can also do something like this. Use the thumb as the action. Not perfect, but and then we're back to not having two hands, of course, but it's only because of this issue. Because this is a bit,
Yeah, and then you also lose sub options then if you do that.
yes. But the thing is, if I don't look at my right hand, if I just do this, it's totally fine.
Yeah. So this is an Apple Vision problem, presumably. Not that it isn't a problem, but I mean that. So
Yeah.
my understanding, yeah.
Yeah, and it's just unbelievably good, Andrew, to actually have this to critique in situ with these things. You know, we couldn't have guessed this particular thing. So I do think having submenus, you know, the approach that I looked at last week, we should also consider that because here it does require a lot of looking. You can't just do this. I agree with you. This provides more nodes. We need to keep designing. The little pointy dot here is quite clever. Is it a strict for what activates? I don't really have to make a pointing thing. That's really quite amazing. Well, I could even use my little finger for, no. Yeah, it does really well.
Yeah, it still is just the index finger, but it doesn't care the gesture you make with it. So there's a lot of freedom. Once you turn your left palm towards you, I actually disable the pointer selector for distant work. So you don't accidentally trigger stuff because that was happening a bit in my initial testing. I can of course turn that back on, but I think it's smoother because you tend to not be trying to select things when you have the menu open.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair enough. So I have a question then of, right now we can select and move around, which is perfection. But What if we now want to open? What is the suggestion? Do we do a double tap? Because that just seems to jiggle it, both in theory and in practice. How should we enable, you've selected something, now you want to do something to it? What are your thinking, guys?
Could you have it if something is selected, the hand menu then has like an open button? No, I don't think that's, never mind. That would be kind of convoluted for people.
That's exactly the sort of thing we need to look at, though. I agree, it may not be the best, but we need to think.
We could put a little like maybe an icon, like if you hover over the text, you know how it bolds, maybe then a little like sphere would appear to the right or the left of the text wherever we want to put it. And it has just kind of like a little icon on it that implies opening it or following a link. And then you could tap the sphere instead to load it. And if you don't choose to tap it and you go and select something else, it'll just go away. I wonder if that would work. It's kind of like a super mini pop-up menu, but it's just an icon,
Could
so it's not in the way.
could you use the other hand? Because one of the things I'm sort of finding the experience is, I mean, it's sort of all these things are kind of obvious after the fact, but actually you're basically, even whether there's a line there or not, you're moving something, and so any movement, unless it's being heavily damped, means that sort of cursor goes around. So the hardest thing I'm generally finding is to be able to press buttons even in the browser, because
Yeah.
every time I go to do it, my hand moves or the cursor moves in a way that's completely counterintuitive from 30 years preceding use of computer screens. So I know it's a different medium, but there is that. So I mean, what one possibility is if you're pointing at the right thing, you have your other hand free to do something. I know. I think we were trying to avoid sort of two-handed gestures. The point being that as long as the other hand is within the purview of the headset, so that it's being tracked, it can do an action. So you know, you don't have to be looking at the other hand, but it can do the action because the human part of you can cope with that quite easily. Point with this finger, you know, do whatever gesture with the other. Because I think if you have to do something else, we've now got the problem of trying to work out that the moment we try to do something else with the hand, the hand that's pointing, then we got to indicate as well we're not now changing the selection. And I suspect there's a lot of really fine granular detail that's easily gone wrong. But I see some hands up. Let someone say something sensible at this point.
Just on a brief comment on that. Sorry, my camera's gone. I think Dini may have the solution to this from what she said before. It might be nice if you point at something and then you do a quick kind of pull towards you to open, you know, like the throwing and pulling. It's easy to forget that dimension since we're not used to it. I don't know. What do you guys think?
We've been hesitant to use that just because it's so easy to trigger accidentally, but it sure feels cool. So I wonder if we should go back and look at it again.
I like cool.
Seems very intuitive to me.
Is there a reason why a quick tap and release can't be like it looks like you want to be able to drag and move text elements around, but in the event that there's a short tap and release where the duration of the gesture is short and the travel of it is short, that can't be used as a simple open?
We could totally use that. That would be pretty streamlined.
You mean like a double tap, so to speak, or what do you mean?
Just a single tap. Just a single tap. So you measure the duration and you measure the travel. And if both of them are low, then that means that it was just a primary action. I mean, that's functionally what, you know, taps and moves on iPhone and things like that are. And so that's just my initial recommendation is like if you tap and you hold on an icon on something, then it'll often or if you tap and you drag at some level, but a tap and release is just primary action. And I think that for consistency's sake, that would be probably the best.
Yeah, that's, I don't know what's going on with my computer, but yeah, that sounds reasonable. Andrew, do you want to try that?
Yeah, I can get that implemented probably for the next update. That doesn't sound that hard to do. And then we can see if there's false positives or if it feels intuitive. It sometimes like that's such like an obvious solution because we all use phones, but we've kind of been ignoring it for the more complicated stuff because we're like, we're in VR. Look at all the things we can do. So thanks,
Right.
Randall, for grounding us once again.
Glad to be able to keep things simple. So, those are all parameters that are up for debate. Is what is the minimum tap duration? All of the stuff that's in Mac OS settings and stuff like what's the minimum tap duration? What's the minimum tap travel? Stuff like that. One of the things that we need to do in a place where there aren't cancelable events or good targeting is you need to make it so that if you tap and drag, like if you invoke an action and then you move, like on Mac OS, if you click on a button and then you move, if you mouse down on a button and then you move your cursor off of the button and then you release, that's functionally canceling it. And we're sort of intuitively able to we're now able to intuit that use. And so having that kind of cancelability of a pattern like that is useful as well. But yeah, in the event that it's sort of unambiguous, like what you'll find is that there's a gray area, but there's a place where it works really well. And as long as for example, the travel isn't more than you get from the basic sort of pinching and immediate release, then it should function.
We should definitely try that. Have you tried this interaction we have now, Brandel? The hands? It's really good.
Not yet. I can
Yeah,
jam it on and take a look.
it's listed as the current thing. Yeah, I don't know what's going on with my screen here, so I use my phone way down. I'm not trying to look like an idiot, but doing it now.
You're back for what it's worth, but maybe you're on your phone.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so yeah, we need to keep iterating with this. We need to definitely try different ways of opening. Where do you all feel the priority for what Andrew should be working on now should be?
I think we should be identifying what the fingers are doing specifically and what the submenus are doing. And build that out. That'd be really nice to have for the Poland conference.
Yeah. The also the thing that was just mentioned that trying to sort of find what we think is a sort of comfortable and well-bounded sort of click, sort of open action. Let's gesture, whatever. In other words, however we implement it, because that seems to be something else that actually turns out to be not as obvious as might be assumed for the environment.
Yeah, I mean, I did do a spreadsheet thinking of how to map the hands-on. It is a bit different because it doesn't show the nodes, but the nodes are definitely there. I don't know if we want to look at that or what approach we want to take.
Andrew, what is the position or command for getting the pointer to select text with the two-handed thing? Because it seems to be kind of arbitrary. I keep changing my left hand and sometimes the pointer pops up and sometimes it doesn't.
I'm not okay, so I feel like you just asked two different things. Are you saying how do you bring up the menu we've been talking about today? And then did I also hear how do you swap your left and right hands?
No, I don't want to swap the right and left hand. sometimes I can point at the text and select it
Hmm.
and move it around.
Oh, and sometimes you can't.
And
I see. So
sometimes
not
I
the
can't.
menu.
The little dot doesn't show up in front of the index on the right hand.
Yeah, so it's based on the left hand. If you turn the palm towards you, all the menu will appear on your
Yeah.
hand, and then the dot
Yeah.
will also appear um, on your index finger of the dominant hand. At the same time, it turns off the remote selection. If you
Right.
turn your non-dominant palm away from you again, then it switches modes back to selecting rather than menu. So that's the way to toggle between the two. If you can see the mana nodes, as Deanie and I have been calling them, the menu, then you'll have the dot on your finger. And if you turn it away, it shuts the whole thing off.
Now I'm referring to the dot that allows you to select text.
The white dot, the one that's remote.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's based on if the hand's turned towards you or not. If it's away from you and you still don't have it, that means you need to make the pointing gesture with your hand. So it'll be kind of the three fingers down. Now, what we could consider now, since we have kind of two modes, we could have the selection always on, but I'm not sure.
Rob, do you mean how you grab something?
Yeah, well, the grabbing with the index finger, I've tried it with the pointing with the finger or just that, and it seems to work better if you close the hand and
Yeah,
point
so
Yeah, that's what
the way
turns it on.
the way it works is the three fingers closing. That's the cue that you're pointing. And once you're pointed at something, to select it, you pinch.
Yeah, I got that, and I can move it around.
Okay.
But there's a lot of text on the screen, and the pointer doesn't go down far enough. I have to actually go down to the floor. The dot, which is selecting the text, does not track where the finger's pointing. It stays much up in the middle.
Yeah,
And
it does not do rotation. Some of the older versions we had rotation, and boy, was that frustrating. It was not good. You'd think it would be useful, but it ends up just being really confusing. Um, Rob, if you need to point really far down, if you ever feel like you sort of initialized the point at a spot you don't want, because it also cares about where you're looking. If you just sort of relax your hand again and release the gesture, and then look further down and do the gesture again, it will now put it further down for you. So
Okay.
it tries to guess where you want to go, and in most cases it's correct, but if you're trying to do wide ranges, it starts to have a little bit of trouble.
Okay.
I've just got one thing, Andrew. It's a sort of byproduct thing, so it's not a complaint. But I noticed putting the headset back on, I'm getting into a blank black environment. I can get the close gesture on here, and it closes the ring, but nothing happens. So I'm not
Yeah, I
sure
think
how I get out of that.
so. I've recently, it's been a long running issue that I've had, and this last update I actually did some testing for it and found a whole bunch of optimization issues that I fixed. Have not found out how to specifically fix that because what's happening is the page is reloading
Hmm.
while you're still inside of the VR mode, or you're entering VR before the page has finished loading. And if either of those happen, you get stuck in, it's essentially the library view. It's where you are when it first starts, but the hands don't load. And I can't figure out why they don't load. It's just um, everything's set up correctly, but the hands are empty because wherever they retrieve the hand models from just is empty. It's blank. Um, and I have the whole system waiting for your hands to load before it does anything. So you'll just be stuck and it won't do anything, and you have to just close it and reload. And unfortunately, I have not found a way to force the hands to load again without reloading the page. I've considered maybe force reloading it myself, but that seems dangerous. For now, I've just compromised and it outputs into the console log kind of like a comment that's like, hey, this thing probably happened. Here's how you fix it. But yeah, it's a little bit of a rough one. I'm sorry.
So that's fine. No, that all makes eminent sense, and there's a well discovery process. One other quick question arising from that is: so if I in that mode on the quest, what do I do to get out of it? Because I'm essentially I'm in an immersive thing that I can't close.
Right.
I can lean out in my sitting space and go into pass through, but I don't see any controls that let me shut the browser.
Yeah, so it's the right hand. The quest menu, it's the same as with the vision actually. That sort of node that pops up between your index and thumb when you turn the palm towards you. You pinch that and it'll close the whole WebXR experience and send you back to the web page.
Okay, because at the moment that's not that's what's not happening for me. So I can get the Oculus sort of logo, do the pinch, and I see a ring close. Basically, it's doing, and I assume that when it does that, they would drop me back into the pass through, but it actually stays in the VR.
Yeah, so the ring is actually kind of like it's a repositioning. It's moving your space to where you've sat down.
Okay.
So essentially useless. Just tap it rather than holding it down, and that should close it.
Thanks.
So, Dini, how would you like to proceed with the discussion of how to map the needed gestures onto the hands?
Well, we had this we spent like 2 hours on Monday kind of brainstorming, right? So what came out of that discussion? We talked about some of the more dominant fingers, and maybe the more dominant activities need to be on those appendages. Did we all agree with that in the end?
Well,
I had to leave a few minutes early.
yeah, I think the notion of dominant, Brandel brought in terminology on how that should be mapped on. But here, what is a dominant finger in use is different from what is a dominant finger to point to, because we're not actually using it as the dominant. So in many ways, the pinky is really easy to touch. So that becomes an easier one. I would say these two middle ones are the hardest to touch. There's more noise. Pinky you can touch even from the side. So we should absolutely have that discussion. But I did also make a spreadsheet mapping these things out for commentary.
Yeah, and then I think we also talked about, we call this the pointing finger. So it should be the pointing finger, right? That's the most obvious thing, right?
On the right hand, yeah.
Well, on your dominant hand, I'm left-handed.
Yeah, sorry, but I'm not sure what language. Look, I'm British. Navigating the lack of dominant and master. Sorry, I don't always get that right. I thought we had shorthand, literally, to just say right hand. I know you're left-handed. Okay. On your what should we call the hand that we generally point with? We should agree with some label for it.
I'm happy with dominant hand. The terminology I introduced was more to do with the fact that WebXR literally calls this the pinky rather than the little finger, and calls this the index finger rather than the pointing finger. And then it actually calls the joints, and so that there's the metacarpal and the phalangeal and things like that. So it has all of the joints rather than just naming the fingers. But the nomenclature is that this is index and this is pinky rather than pointing and little. So that was the only thing that was adding to the conversation.
I agree with that, but I think when people think about their hands, this is their pointing finger, this is their ring finger, right? This is the little thing. Doesn't matter. In the end, this is the finger we usually go, and you stop that. When we use the pointing,
Yeah. So just as a reference point, I was saying this is thumb, index, middle, ring, pinky. That's there. It is called a ring finger in WebXR. So,
but certainly, I think it helps to do dominant hand because certainly left-handed people navigate that left and right problem fairly well. But in a sense, the good analogy is pick up a pair of left-handed scissors. And you know they're scissors, they just don't work magically. So that's where you can if we can generally try and use dominant and non-dominant simply because then that's easily mapped. The mind will do that. Okay, so that's a different hand. Otherwise, in our general conversation, normally left and right literally left and right hand. So if you use right hand as shortcut for your dominant hand, that will not be understood necessarily by someone who's listening. It's not intentional.
Mark,
It's not.
All you do is pick up golf clubs. I play golf, and I picked up. I mean, my father was right-handed, and I had to play right-handed. It was horrible. And when I picked up left-handed golf clubs, I was good.
Yeah.
Right.
So anyway, it's one of those. It's this weird thing because
we're
in
happy
effect,
we're happy to call this the index finger. So, and we have a dominant hand. So Dini was making the point about the index finger on the dominant hand, right?
Mhm.
And for our dominant hand to do the pointing, I think that's locked down. I think we're happy with that. When it comes to the non-dominant hand, see you later, Peter. At the non-dominant hand, we need to decide how to map functions onto that, right? So I'm
Can I
wondering.
ask a question of everybody else? I never really learned to type well, and learning the guitar and piano was a struggle for me because my little fingers, my pinkies, are not that coordinated, right? It's really hard for me to use my pinkies. And so I try to avoid anything that requires me to do a lot with this. So how much do other people use their little fingers? How?
But I think the point is that, we move the pointy finger on our dominant hand, but we're pointing to the secondary hand. And we're literally just pointing to it. It doesn't actually do anything. So that's why I think pinky and thumb are easy targets. And then it gets a bit more muddy in the middle with the three of them. Not completely. But so that's why if something is really frequently done, we should consider them. But this is something we can only really discover by experimenting.
Just a thought. The interesting thing that I just, the really useful thing of Andrew Slater's saying is I was happy how easy it was for me to do the sort of, touch the finger you're not looking at, so the proprioception bit working fine. So I'm not. This isn't a disagreement. It's just that I'm not sure there's any particular need to overstress the thumb and the pinky unless we really need to. Yeah. I mean, I think for most of it, it's easy to find the right finger.
To answer your question, Denny, I'm a touch typist. I studied touch typing, and I have some sort of amalgam of touch typing and what ultimately is more comfortable for what I really have to do. But it means that I use my pinky for all of the shift keys and command keys and stuff like that. So it's probably a little bit more strengthened as a result. But one thing that is important as well is the tracking fidelity of all of the different digits. And in general, Quest is worse at pinkies just because it understands them to be less important. But if Mark, in your experiences and Andrew, from what you've been doing, if you're getting good enough positional data about the whereabouts of the pinky, particularly when it's facing you, then we're probably in the clear. But in general, I've also noticed when I was trying to do like polyphonic musical keyboards in WebXR that the quality of its ability to even discern the position of the pinky was much more limited than the fidelity of certainly the first three fingers.
I agree with that. Andrew has a hand up.
Yeah. So this is really interesting listening to. But I also wonder if perhaps we are almost debating the wrong point. Because I think what the discussion, when Ellie said as the developer for it, it matters less which finger is like easier to reach because sure, some of them are easier than others, but not by any significant amount. What matters more is the space we have to put menu items. So the three fingers in the middle, or specifically, I guess the middle finger and the ring finger, they're a bit crammed. They've got less space because they're sitting between the index and the pinky. So we would want to put less there initially. Of course, we can extend things out as far as we want, but it's worth considering. Any sort of the extremities is easier, which I would include the index finger because there's still plenty of space to go up from there. And the pinky's obviously easy. Thumb has tons of space. middle is very crammed. So maybe we consider it that way.
Rhoda, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, we need to try different ways, but I mean, I would like it if we tried the graph or the tables that I put together to
Okay.
see. But I do very much like Andrew's nodes, but I think splitting in two should be maximum because it gets quite cluttered when there's three and it goes quite deep. But we do have to have some sort of agreement on what fingers, and we did go through it. We spent all of Monday on it, on the hands. But I'm not sure how much further we got, but
I think the difficulty with this is the practical difficulty. I'm sorry, this is going to sound wrong. So this isn't a counter comment to what Freud just said, but just reflecting on the general thing is that, of course, until you've basically had to practice it. So I'm wondering if we're getting to the point where we actually want to start actually, in a sense, doing some small tests. So we undertake to do something. They don't have to take more than a minute or two, but can you actually do this? Because knowing the right, it's one thing for us to write a menu system where it's not till you start using it, either one's created or one that somebody else has created, you work out whether it works or not. And the other problem is that if the menus you're trying to use are full of things that don't have much resonance for you. So this is the other problem. So we're going to do a menu thing, but we don't know quite what the menu item is going to be. So there's a bit of a chicken egg problem there that I don't pretend to have an answer for, but I do think it's something we'll have to work through. Because it doesn't run counter to anything of what we've been saying about the mapping and the depths. I agree with the point that having an endlessly sort of decomposing menu is probably not ideal. But the inference I take from that is then we're imposing a quite strict limit in a particular context of the number of supportable menu items we have. And given that they broadly need to decompose from a higher level, that actually is a constraint, and maybe one we need to think into and take ownership of, because that may be a real true constraint that doesn't come out of the technology, but just comes out of the practicality of what we're trying to do. Fred?
yeah, I mean, that is what I did for Monday's meeting. That's I took the commands as a starting point from author and reader because it is real software. And they do not do everything at all, of course not. But I took the starting point as being the context menus and put them on the table so that I made sure they were somewhere. But even within this, there are still free fingers. I think we should have discussions of what are the things that we would expect people to do often. I think find is probably one of them. And yes, find will mean different things in different contexts. But it is, if we're going to take ownership of it, as you say, Mark, we have to make some proposals, and then we have to discuss them. Because this very much relates to the discussion we've been having for quite a while now on what should be in the background view when we're looking at these things, the entities. It's similar.
Well, one thought is that maybe, I mean, I'm very impressed with what we're looking at today. Maybe we got to a resting point where we now need to flop back to actually unpicking a bit more of the reading, so that because it's doing the reading actually in XR as opposed to any other experiential space we have, that we can understand. So in other words, it's almost forcing up, it's doing the thing without the controls. Say, right, I definitely need this and I definitely need that, as opposed to us positing it. Because the problem it's not that it's not, again, I don't want this to sort of sound wrong. It's not that it's the things we look at Monday were anyway wrong, so much as that when I think about it, I think it makes sense. But until I actually go and read something, I won't know whether I want to find something. So my agreement is not based on experience of the correct context. It's based on something else, which does make it wrong, but it makes it difficult to know whether it's actually helpful. And also, given that the labels are essentially mappable, I don't think we should stress ourselves too much on that. Dini, sorry.
you asked what we should do next, and you made a comment that you like to see, that you like your the way you've mapped things out. So let's just move ahead with what your plans were.
Well,
Since that's what you want to do, right?
yes, but I don't want to do it in just a let's go ahead and do it. I think it's very useful to have a discussion, so we can maybe save Andrew some time on what, if there's anything that seems at the moment obviously correct, obviously wrong. I'll share the screen then, so you can see here if you. So the thing is, hang on, I'll stop scrolling in a second. There we go. Because we have different tasks, obviously. It's not just reading. Reading is here. There's also going to be writing, editing, and then looking at maybe something should be universal. Whatever you're doing in our environments. Proceedings should really be called the proceeding/library. So that's meant to represent the view of several documents on the screen.
Then can I make a recommendation? Since our year one is focused primarily on reading and library sharing and that kind of activity, we focus on perhaps the universal and proceed and library first, then move to the reading section, and we then build out for later the writing and the editing in year two.
I don't have. Oh, sorry. I was just going to agree with you. Please continue, Dini.
Yeah, I'm just saying that would make it really easy. And we can also, if we start with something like universal, we can test that, make sure it's working properly, move to library, test that, then jump into reading, right? So take it step by step. Other people's thoughts?
I think it's reasonable to do it in sequence. And Andrew, love to hear what you have to say, of course.
Yeah, mostly just agreeing. I'd love to do universal first. I'm less of a fan of swapping out what the fingers represent because that kind of ruins any of the muscle memory we're trying to do. If like, okay, middle finger is annotations, but now it's view mode, like that
No.
starts to be a little bit. But I understand that's
No,
what
but
right-click menus do.
Can I tell you why?
Sorry.
No, I'm interrupting you. I'm really sorry. But Mark highlighted that the labels here are obviously all fuzzy, right? So the reason view and annotations are the middle fingers is because they essentially do the same thing, believe it or not. So the labels are a bit odd. What I mean is when you're in the proceedings and library and you have no selection, middle finger annotations gives you it gives you the option to see and hide whatever things have had certain annotations. So that's basically a view, right? And so the middle finger is always apply a thing to make a thing for an annotation or to view based on that. But when you're writing, you have a little bit more options. So I guess I'm not saying it should be like that, but I'm just defending the logic behind it as it is now. That's all I meant to say.
Okay, gotcha. What if this is kind of like a crazy idea I just thought of. What if instead of that, it's just show hide as a finger? If you have a single thing selected, of course, it shows and hides it, right? That's useful. But if you have nothing selected, then it gives you the sub menu of annotations, titles, all of those as like sub options. And all you're doing is showing and hiding all of them because you're in the show and hide menu rather than needing a finger for every single category with just show hide as their options.
No. Misunderstanding. I think we are on the same page on this one. The notion here is when you, let's say we follow this, so index, you touch index, category, we have the menu system you've developed, so they would be out in space. The earlier idea I had, you would then go to a hand, I agree with you, is quite constrained. So I think that's the same. 1 second. Right. like this stuff, it shoots out. Here it's called load. It's just an earlier version. Sorry, it's really tiny. But that's the meaning of it. Does that make sense?
Okay. How do you want to show and hide the different like map items?
So
Because I
the
thought those were the fingers, right?
so the
Oh, I
idea,
see.
yeah,
Category.
yeah. Category is it's not the best name, but it is tag basically. You know, we have to decide on the best name to give to the user.
Well, all it is just showing and hiding stuff, right? So we could just call it show/hide or
But it's
like
not though.
manage or something.
It's also select. This is where I got into a big headache. Because if I now do institution, if institution's on the screen, I want to be able to select all the institution. On the Mac, it's not a problem because I can hide and reveal them with a click on a keyboard shortcut. But to go through this twice becomes a bit of an effort. That's why the category is to either select all of that or hide or show.
But
Okay.
I'm just thinking, could those two not merge in the sense that if I follow Andrew's point correctly, because in a sense, what's being posited is if you turn around the logic, so instead of choose something, show hide it, you go show hide mode, choose something, and then in a sense, it's less ambiguous what you're going to do with it. I sense the two could probably live together, but I find myself thinking, well, what does our actual use case say here? Or maybe we need to, concurrently with this, is actually flesh out our use case a bit. So we're actually capturing what we want to do or what we think we need to test. Because otherwise we're going to end up working back from imagined design. And my experience is that isn't always actually, that tends to lead one into a blind alley.
So the most immediate thing here is you got all your papers in front of you, the proceedings, and then you have these entities around the room. Let's say one of them, you've now decided, you know there is the names of the authors. So you want to see all persons, right? Or you want to hide them. That's half of it. The other half is you want to select all the authors because now you want to move them as one.
But do we, as a group, I know that's how you work and that's how your map works, but I just wonder if we've actually fully expanded that out. So so at the moment, I understand the derivation you're making, and it's from the workspace you're used to in the map you've created, in the tool you created. But for instance, I don't, when you describe that, I don't have any internal echo of that. That's something I would be doing when I'm trying to read, when I'm trying to understand, read proceedings. So one of the things I sense has happened is we've got disconnected from our use case in the proceedings things of what we're trying to do. We need to sort of reset ourselves because we've drifted. So we're conflating the mapping with the proceedings exploration. They're similar. One of the problems is the map is at the mature end. You're showing and hiding things because you know what these things are. When you start, you don't necessarily know what they are. And we shouldn't be going down the rabbit hole of just sort of basically using AI to color in the bits we can't be bothered to describe. I think we do need to actually think these things through. We may well use AI to do that for us when we know that's what we want. But well, I strongly, I just don't at the moment see an echo of the work that I do given the proceedings in what we're doing. So we're doing map stuff. We're not doing reading proceedings.
Right. So AI hasn't really entered the room in this conversation yet, as far as my thinking. What is an assumption is that we will have very good metadata. We may have to manually make it for the demo because this is a demonstration to show how interactions can be with good metadata. So the map is not just about when you know the room. The map, the intention is that when you go in here, you will have a list of all the authors somewhere, institutions maybe. There will be some topics. that us together as curators of AI may have extracted from these papers, because obviously topics is a bit more fragile and people's names and links. So some of it will be present.
But we're going around a circle here, because what I'm trying to say to you is those categories you mentioned are not important to me. If you're trying to read papers and understand them, that's not what you're looking at in the first place. You're looking at the paper, the title. You're basically trying to get a handle on the contents. All this other stuff it's not that it's unimportant, but it's not relevant at that point. And so it's carrying too much weight at the moment, and it's dragging us off from actually looking at the actual use case at hand, which we're
what is the use case as you see it? That's very important to highlight.
Well, it's not just me. I'm saying from
we may have misunderstood each other, so that's why I'm asking, what is it as far as you see it?
So you basically have, proceedings is essentially a binding. It's a binding of a number of essentially almost random documents, which are broadly on a theme, but that they're random in the sense that they weren't written to dovetail with one another, and they normally represent a different narrative sort of theme or subject theme through the broad area. So in looking at them, if they're new to you, you're basically going through, you're actually doing a triage in the first thing, because probably the first thing you want to do is to put to one side the things that perhaps have absolutely no interest to you personally. That's not making a judgment about the quality of the work. It's just saying that I don't need to know about, I don't know, recommender systems because I'm actually interested in links or something.
What information do you feel you need to know about a paper to make that judgment? Is it title and author, or is it title, author?
No, it's the authors. The authors are immaterial. They really are at this point. I don't know why we're so caught up on the authors. It's the title. It's the subject matter. Is what is interesting.
So how do you find the subject matter? Is that through the abstract?
Yeah, you have to look at the title. You then look at the abstract, which should basically should expand the title. That may or may not give you enough. If it's something that's really off your topic, that's probably enough to you to say, I can put that to one side. For something that's closer, go ahead, Dini.
I agree with you, Mark. I think when I'm going back and looking at what I had written way back, what I want to do for the library is figure out it. Like right now, I'm finishing up a paper with Mariusz, and I'm looking at titles of Googling and looking at Google Scholar and looking at titles. I'm not looking for people. And I'm looking at reading the abstract, and then I'm saying, okay, who wrote this? Even when we're doing reviews, like I'm reviewing for a journal right now, I'm not even allowed to know who the author is. I'm just looking at the title, the abstract, and the work itself, and deciding if it's got quality for the journal, right? There are times when I want to read you in specifics, so that needs to be there. But I'm in total agreement with you about the title and the abstract being the most important.
So the things that the reading space as I see it, or the proceeding space, the task at hand is what you're actually doing is you're almost zooming in and out of closeness to a particular paper, because you might in the proceedings, oh wait a minute, there was also this paper was right, so they're both on this topic, and for that you might use keywords, but broadly you're going to be using your working memory, your close working memory, your short-term memory for this. So all this other stuff is, so things like keywords are more about later retrieval and categorization. The title decomposes into the abstract. The abstract may have to be looked at further, in which case you're probably going to be looking at the introduction. However, that's
okay. Mark, just as a clarification, because Dini has to leave soon, in terms of what you're saying, what is it that you currently want this system to facilitate that you can't easily do going through PDFs on your computer currently?
To be able to essentially have, for instance, to see instead of seeing a whole lot of titles, is seeing the titles and the abstracts not necessarily all immediately visualized, but contingently quickly visualizable, without me basically going from document A to document B. So it's almost like you've got layers of decomposition, which you want to see a different one at a different time. And then within that, what you're broadly doing is you're doing a sort of interest sort of essentially sort of three sort of categories, from not interested to interested, but put to one side to I really want to I want to stop doing what I now because I'm so excited I want to read this thing.
Okay, so that's basically the library we have now. You can point to a title and the abstract comes up on the side. That is a large part of that, right?
Well, the library is something different. It's a different view. We're talking about
a view that forget what's made up of. We have one view where we have a lot of titles of papers. You point to one, on the side you see the abstract. That solves a lot of this for you, right? The fact that it isn't necessarily, the fact that it could be a proceedings.
Yeah, so I'm just trying to explain to you. So, well, what are you trying to do? So that you need to be able to see it at a comfortable enough size. So, for instance, rather than just see the abstract, that abstract probably needs to go at 2 or 3 times that size, so you can just easily read it.
Okay, let me ask
and then be able to just so that a lot of it, in my as you asked me, in my mind's eye, actually is about visual manipulation, because you want it to be you want to pull this thing to the front focus so you can read it without sort of squinting at it, because that's what you're doing on paper. You're trying to read ghastly sort of 2-column 10-point text or something, which is never comfortable reading. Whereas if you, as you say, if we have the ability, we have the structure, we can pull this out, you can put it at a comfortable size, which for everyone will be slightly different, but essentially, so if I say at a comfortable size, but when you put that back or away, or whatever metaphor we use, that would either go back to being a visible, say, abstract, or it might collapse back into its title, which is probably the top level proxy for the whole of the document that it comes from. But you might want to, if we're talking, this thing of well, we have good metadata, you might, for instance, want to surface the research questions, because the point is, until you're reading this thing, until you get to the point where you've made a decision as to what you're going to do with it next. So that's the problem space.
Right.
All the other annotations come way later, when you're looking at your library, which is the thing into which you put things after you've done this reading phase. So that's where I think the confusion arises. There's a big difference between what you create from the reading and the reading itself.
Okay, is there any reason you can't do this with good software on a 27-inch monitor?
I don't really understand the rationale for the question.
The rationale for the question is, and no, I'm not hawking or selling Reader, but even in Reader, we have a library view. I could relatively easily make an expanded view to show everything in a proceedings if we had the metadata for do that. And I could relatively easily make it so you click on a paper in that, and then you get information on the side. These are very 2D things. See you later, Dini. So I'm just wondering if we're going to really explore the XR side of it, what do you think actually requires a wider view? Because
one of the things
I agree with. Sorry, I just want to clarify. I agree with the process you're saying. Of course I do. But it's just not, there's no reason to put on a headset to do it, I think.
Well, I've never claimed there was, but we decided as a research thing, this is what we're going to do. So we're saying that, what could you do in XR? So one of the things I think, that I would think is that you'd make more use of, compared to a flat screen, you make more use of the ability to put things, because that's something we seem to cope with, quite naturally, and we sort of know, okay, well, I'm putting the things I'm less interested maybe in that corner, and the things I'm more interested in this corner. It's not as easy to do on a 2D screen, because you normally run out of space. Whereas the attraction to me and the XR is more the malleability of the environment, i.e. what you summon. It is the visualization part of it. The number of dimensions has a relevance of more or less relevance dependent on the task at hand, but I don't, but the difficulty there is you start getting into a judgment about it, which is not my point here. It's just that what you need to do for the thing we're trying to do is you basically need to do this level of granularity decomposition of the source documents. That's the key thing you're doing, because you're doing that until you get to the point where you've made a decision of the relevance of the document. And when you've done that, you've got to the point where you can think about whether you want to put it in the library. But until that point, the library is not relevant.
Yeah, by library, Well, I mean, I find this a very, very frustrating part of the project because we were now looking at how to map things onto a hand, and that for some reason it becomes a very difficult discussion because there are many different viewpoints. But also, Dini likes to talk about being in a 360 environment on a swivel chair, invented by Charles Darwin, apparently, the swivel chair, and having a wide view. That isn't XR at all. XR is basically looking at a screen through 2 toilet paper rolls currently. I've been spending a lot of time reading and writing in XR lately. And I'm not being all, XR is horrible, not at all. But I think there are some current realities that we really need to accept. And for me, that is one. When I'm sitting writing, the screen that I have in Author for Vision at a normal comfortable text and a normal comfortable scale is smaller than my 27-inch display in terms of what text fits on it. That was a surprise, right? So I really think we need to obviously look at the workflow. Maybe we shouldn't do all the parts of the workflow, but we do need to tease out the bits that really shine in XR. And to me, what shines in XR is having many things in the space to be brought to bear on the things you're working at. And I would love other perspectives on that, obviously. But to expect someone to, especially on a demo day at Hypertext, but on a headset, and then realistically go through and decide what to read, which is something they should do back in their room afterwards, because the software will be available, might be a bit much. What is the excitement exploding?
But you keep coming back to this excitement thing. I'm not sure that's actually it's a nice thing to have, but it's not the primary requirement. I mean, the research task that's being done. I'm trying to sort of bring us back into the parameters of what we set out to do. Actually, the XR space is larger. It's not. I think it's easy to get hung up on the bit you can see, but I've been used to working on sort of limitless maps for years. I can only ever look at a small part of it, but my mind knows where the bits that aren't on screen are. So I don't quite follow the screen size limitation things. I mean, having a very small screen is just limiting because you can't see very much information at all, and you probably can only look at one thing. I mean, I'm sitting in front of 3 screens, and that's certainly more comfortable. But actually, the thing in the XR is that I think is useful is that I think it's potentially more, you can have a decomposition that's more easily understandable. If you start to do those same decompositions on a 2D view, it's sort of hard to imagine, because basically you normally do this with a proxy piece of paper, something that looks, a rectangle of white or black or whatever, whichever light or dot mode you're in, but you basically have a document. What we're saying here is, no, I don't need nor want to see the document at this point, because I'm not trying to read a document. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to do something more sophisticated, which is to extract the bits that I know I need from the document, howsoever extracted, and to interact with those quickly and usefully. And that actually is quite hard to do, I think, on a 2D screen.
Yeah, I don't know. You're saying excitement and all of that isn't part of the brief. To me, that's the entire brief. We're not producing a commercial piece of software for academics to use. There aren't that many academics of this level in the world. To me, the entire brief is someone puts on the headsets like, oh, wow, I can work in here. We need to do more.
But is that what we got the grant to do?
Yes.
I don't argue. I don't argue with the fact that it should be exciting.
Mark, it is to investigate reading and writing in XR.
Okay, the point. I hate to be pedantic about this, but the point is, it doesn't say in there that the key thing we have to do is to make it exciting, because if we take that as a key driver, it pulls us in different directions, and one of the things it keeps seeming to do is to pull us away from something that we said we're trying to do.
But Mark, there's nothing in the brief that says we have to provide a fully functioning solutions for academics in dealing with their documents. Nothing.
No,
There-
but I
there's-
said that.
I'm trying, no, right? But there's three parts to our grant. One is metadata, two is the social side, and three is WebXR software to investigate reading in XR. That is it, right? And we've talked about academics being our initial user group. Now, if we get in there and we do something that a clever user with a little bit of time can better sort through things, that is great. But if they go in there and they're left with a feeling, this is nice, but it was basically just a big monitor, I think we haven't done it justice. And currently, I'm having a really, really hard time getting to that particular interaction, although I think we should work to find it. That is what my reputation on this project is. It is that putting it on, feeling, oh, I can work in here. This is different from just a screen. Randall.
On things like this may be sort of secondary to the sort of the central battleground in this particular discussion, but I think it bears repeating, is that with regard to, for example, things like tracking fidelity, resolution, field of view, WebXR has already sort of visibly changed during the course of this project already in terms of the state of the art of how good the quality is by virtue of, you know, Vision OS 1.0's implementation behind the flag, 1.1 with the transient input, whether we've managed to make use of it or not, and then with the 2.0 and 2.1 beta. I can't remember if we have. No, I think it's 2.0 beta 2. I think is what it's called. It's not unreasonable to expect that WebXR and sort of the core sort of technological mediating layer between the intent and the action is liable to change. And so one of the things that I think, and again, like, you know, I did not write the brief. I'm not actually involved in the project, but I think it's one of the most valuable things that this project could do in general is to provide a foundation for findings and observations about the nature of certain ideas and opportunities and how they are modulated by changes in the underlying technological substrate, because we know it will change, and we know that as this gets more popular as a field, a lot of people will follow, specifically this project, but especially the early research into actually using VR and WebXR for this kind of stuff. And so in order to be the most useful as a publication, as a document, as a reference point in history, like thinking about it along those lines, I think is an important part of it as well. And I mean, I guess, I don't know that I would call that exciting as much as sort of responding to the novelty. So yeah, I don't know which side that comes down on in terms of the two things that you two are representing and are arguing. But I think it's an important part to remember is that this is trying to create some structure from a moment in time, and to be able to delineate all of the things that we've decided and discerned based on responding to that moment in time.
Yeah. I mean, I'm okay, to be very, very clear. At this point, I'm quite scared. I'm quite scared of the whole XR world in general because, of course, other people are doing some amazing stuff, but you know, I'm so privileged to have the headset here, and sometimes I bring it in, sometimes I work with it here, but so far, and it may change tomorrow when I have the App Store or next week, depending on when it will be released in the UK, to try different experiences. But so far, it's just not worth having a thing on my head, even if I imagine that thing being tiny in 10 years in the future. And you know, this is when things are being defined. I mean, the Future of Tech Social, where you know, we came up with the double-handed things and dots and things, and suddenly Apple does it at the same time. Obviously, Apple didn't steal our idea, They were maybe inspired by Oculus, but the point is there are some things in the air, so to speak. And if we're going to do a meaningful contribution here, it has to be to open it up. So the discussion we've had today about how can we make it over time intuitive to use our hands, but at the same time flexible enough that we can increase the vocabulary. I'm trying to write a paper for human. I'm finding it really difficult because I wanted to write about the whole hand. Like, hey guy, come. Like, all we have now is this, and we all agree that's pretty pathetic, right? We do need to be able to express finer control. So Dini's notions of, throwing stuff she doesn't like, it's playful, it's important. It may not work. There may not be threshold, there may be issues, I don't know. But, we can turn our hands, we can twist them. We have many different nerves in here. We have all this stuff. And right now, I'm sitting in a bit of a doldrums. There is no wind saying this. The only thing I can think of is essentially some kind of a graph view, purely because it uses space. You can call it a gimmick. And am I saying it's going to revolutionize going through proceedings? Absolutely not. It might. But yeah, I feel like, what the heck, guys, is going on with this world? Now, one thing we have that is so incredible, if you hold it up, it's almost like a candelabra, isn't it? Literally lighting our way, what Andrew has built for us. The fact that we're in a group where we can argue till the cows come home, but we can actually build stuff, holy moly, right? So I think in the closing minutes of today, we need to give Andrew some marching orders, Andrew, you being part of the we there, obviously, of how to take this further. So actually, you know what, Andrew, I hope you're still here. I'm going to ask you a very provocative question.
Yep.
What do you think you should do for next Wednesday?
Well, I want to test out that quick tap for functionality. I know that's not the hand menu, but it seems like something I could get working in just a couple hours. So I'd love to have that. Aside from that, I was kind of expecting to have, potentially a direction to go with the hand menu. Whether that's putting in some functionality, changing the way the nodes are. I could even going into this, I wasn't sure if people would actually like the node, so I was like, maybe we'll do a redesign. But it sounds like for now the nodes are sticking, if I'm understanding correctly.
Yeah.
So I guess the logical thing would be to start implementing the menu that you have written out here. But it once we started discussing that, there were so many different opinions that suddenly popped up. I don't know if I should put it together as the document says, or if we should be like, well, it's worth testing. I'll put it together first, and then we can change stuff afterwards. What would you say?
The boss of this project is Dini and me. In the sense, at some point, we have to just try something. We're all part of the discussion, but in the sense of let's try it. So let's just
try it.
Yeah, but let's walk it through together. Let's spend a few minutes. I'll just introduce it. Interrupt me at any times because it may be complicated. So starting on the right here, because of the value of the thumb and the little finger, one of the things that's hard to do in XR currently is to have a context menu based on selected stuff. So that's why we have a difference between selected text and no selection, right? So thumb throughout produces some kind of a find option, whether it's based on what you have selected or not. Little finger works on focus. And focus in this context, I think we have defined to mean bring closer in many cases. But if you're actually reading text or even writing, it may mean focus mode in the traditional sense of graying everything else. So just like with keyboard on computers, it should be the similar thing, right? Now, the middle finger is all about views because it's in the middle, right? It's just there. And that can mean either generating a view or adding something so that the view can happen. And I'm not going to go through everything, that would be mind-numbingly boring. But if we look at the difference between, while we're in this binding or collection of papers, if nothing is selected, then we really thumb to find something in there. Index is show and hide, as we talked about, because the entities would be there. And then there would be view based on categories, but also based on annotations, right? So that
Could we clarify what find is? Because it's been mentioned quite a few times and we really don't know what it is. Is this like a search bar? What are you picturing for this?
So I'm answering by showing because it's, thank you, Mark. You've helped me see that some of this language is difficult. Okay, I just happen to have this document. So let's say we're in here. Find in reader now is three different things. It is find in document, find in the library, or find online. So probably for now, find should just produce, let's say, three submenus. It doesn't need to be active in any way.
Okay, so this is back to kind of what we had when we were doing the citation menu, where find would show the results inside the document.
Yeah.
But how would find, I guess you're just searching for keywords in the entire document?
If you have selected something, it'll do a search based on the selection, right? Like that.
Okay.
But
Oh yeah, I guess we can't select specific words in our software. It's kind of like we could do keywords and we can do things like that. So maybe it's simpler than I'm thinking.
It is simpler. It's also much more complicated because we aim to have voice at some point. So I could imagine, we can speak to Siri, Alexa, whatever, and say blah, blah, blah. We may also want to be able to just touch here, and then whatever we say will then be what's searched for. So I think right now you don't need to worry about implementing find. We all need a responsibility of finding out what the heck find should do.
Okay. Now the other thing I wanted to ask is where are settings? Because I thought we were going to have those somewhere. Is that not the case? Are we not putting settings on there and keeping them on the wrist?
I was thinking that would be in the palm.
Well, where do you go with the nodes once you tap the palm? Because you can't really put it anywhere.
So the fanciest notion I can imagine is if you touch your palm, you actually get an animation of all of these going away, like being shut off. And underneath, you have other options. So it's the one case.
Oh, so settings just changes the mode. Okay, I could see that working.
Yeah, that's it.
I might change the color. It might go from orange to like something else. So it's or like a muted orange or something to keep our color palette. I don't know.
To change the settings area, maybe even change the color of the hand would be a very good idea because you're doing a different kind of thing. So thank you for that. But that kind of conflicts with the notion of keeping the watch as a clipboard. So, I mean, I'm saying if we can use the palm and separate the sphere on the arm, that would be really good.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear any of that. My internet cut out. I could see you gesturing nicely.
Yeah, I'm just saying if we use the palm and can keep the sphere as a separate touchable object, that would be good because that should be clipboard probably.
I think you'll be triggering the sphere by accident if you're trying to pinch on your palm. It's too close. Why do we need the sphere still at this point? You said the clipboard, but we're not going to have copy paste for a long time, if ever. So
we're going to have copy paste quite soon because it's the most important.
Oh, we are?
We have to. Don't
First I've heard of it. Okay.
No, Andrew. All of these functions are conceptual, right? Right now, we're worried about how they feel. So a really important thing we have to acknowledge is when you read something, you want to do two things. You want to annotate and you want to copy. Those are primary things within your reading it. You agree, right, Mark? So whether they're functional or not is completely secondary, but that we have to be able to go through the feeling of whether it can be done.
Is this copy like the clone thing we had before with the citations, or is this like
So
what are you copying? Are you copying the content or are you copying the nodes themselves?
So I here select and reader, and I now, let's just do that again. I option click and I go to copy. I have two options, plain text or quote, right?
Right.
But if I don't select any text, I have copy to cite. It just copies the citation for that document. So it's
Okay,
not.
but we're not doing writing until year 2. So
No,
how
no,
is this?
it's for you to completely blissfully ignore. Just think of it as being there will at some point be a copy function, which look, if I get my
Okay.
dream wishes, it'll have all the visual meta behind it, it'll have all that powerful stuff. For the next 2 years, probably nothing to think about. It's just an action of copying something that is selected, whether it's a full document, section of a document. That's it. We could even have a clipboard manager here at some point, but we do need
Gotcha.
a copy thing. And one
So,
thing,
but what I'm confused on is why are we trying to keep that for the sphere if the sphere is only copy and copy won't work for our demo? It seems a little bit strange to have something there that's just non-functional.
because we're talking about living the dream, we're talking about being in an environment where you feel you can do everything and everything is
Okay.
finished.
We just hope that nobody tries to do it.
No, we can, no, I don't mind. Let's say we do a little voice in there, like we talked about. Very happy to say, sorry, copy's not enabled yet. We're working on it. Please give us a break. You know,
Okay. All right.
something cute like that. So
Cool.
of course, as a programmer, you take functional requirements very importantly. What I think is a really important functional requirement here is the feel of it. As much of it as should work. I'm not saying we should make just a plain demo, but yeah. Oh, sorry. What I'm trying to say, Andrew, in a different way is, it is an important function, so therefore it'll be there in the future. Let's not design away our hands not to have it.
Okay, gotcha. But it's not part of this menu. You're saying put it on the sphere, so we'll just not worry about it right now. I'll keep the sphere. I'll disable the sphere functionality, and yeah, that'll be fine.
Well, okay. So then we have the issue of how do you then toggle from the different levels, like from the library to the proceedings and all of that stuff. That's a discussion we need to keep repeating, because
Yeah, well, it almost sounds like the library's becoming the map view, but I don't know. It's we haven't nailed it down exactly. But if see the map view has all of the titles of the documents,
yeah,
and if you can quick tap to open them, now it's also the library.
yeah.
So we're getting to the point where we don't need the library, except the library has the ease of showing the abstract and the title and stuff. So it's very easy to find what you want. And we don't have that in the current map view because there's nowhere to put it. Unless we want to just have like a preview box that's there by default that shows that stuff, and you can close it if you don't want it. That might be worth looking into.
Yeah, I mean, as Marcus pointed out, that the proceedings are not only just a binding; they're also a binding that you're very rarely going to care about, right? That is an important thing. So maybe we have the binding as a thing in the library, so we don't even remove the library when we're going through it. We just, as I think most of you said, put the rest of the library somewhere in the back, maybe even behind the user, flip it around. I don't know.
If I remember, the proceedings were treating it as a library. It is just a collection of documents with like an intro document essentially. So I believe that that's fundamentally all we're doing.
I think Mark had a thought as well.
Well, I'm just thinking in terms of the one thing I don't hear in these menus is how you do the sort of the decomposition, the zoom in and out of the level of the document, because that's a core thing that you're going to have to do as part of the reading. Because in our imagined space where we have the metadata, so we know what all the bits are, that's a really interesting metaphor, whether it's done by gesture or by explicit command or both, because that to me is one of the biggest excitements actually of XR, being able to do this. So I don't actually have to read, I don't have to play paper anymore. I can actually interact with the richness and structure of a text by using its structure.
So the
rather
thinking,
rather than a single linear presentation. But we don't at the moment seem to have any controls or menus to do that.
So the thinking with this layout is view and focus is very much about that. So I can imagine you select something, let's say a heading in a document, and then you choose focus. So that gets lifted. Focus on
so how, okay, but so for sake of argument, we go back to this point about how would you basically redraw the view so that you have, say, all the document objects for which the title will normally stand proxy, and all their abstracts. So you might treat that almost like as a first layer decomposition. So in my envisioned space, I want all those things to now decompose one level. Just as a thought experiment. But that's something that I can see.
What do you mean by decompose one level?
Sorry?
What do you mean by decompose one level?
Right. Well, like I just said. So if you think of the abstract as the first thing you unpick within the document, the first object within it you can get to. Level's probably a wrong term, so I'm deliberately want to step away from the hierarchy and the linear structure, which is so constraining to understanding. But it's just being able to say, so let's say for sake of argument, I have, for whatever reason, I've got 10 documents in the environment that I'm looking at. I'm not going to give it a name because I'm trying not to cite it in something else. So I've for whatever reason, I've got to the point, I've got say 10 documents in front of me. Now, instead of just seeing the titles, I would like to see their abstracts as well. Let's not go into exactly what they look like. But the point is, I'm saying I want an expansion of each document to show me an extra object as well as the one that I can see at the moment.
So you basically want a little bit of an accordion almost.
No, because I'm not interested in the linear structure. And I deliberately, the key point of this is...
Okay, so you have the title, you have the abstract, and then you want to do a thing to see what?
Well, the document has a collection of all these things inside it. If you think of the document as like a box, and then you look inside, there are all these bits, and if you pull one out, one bit's a title, one bit's an abstract. There is some metadata that tells you the linear way in which these fit together, but we're not interested in linear. We can do that on paper.
I understand that. So you have a view now of 10 papers, and they're showing the title and the abstract. What would be the next thing you might want to see?
Well, let's deal with that first, because the whole point is if we can't even do that, we don't know what that is, then the deconstruction below that becomes moot. What I'm trying to get at is that, so if we're talking about controls and menus, one of the actions, and I don't even know what term we're going to give it at the moment, is this sort of this decomposition, this remediation of the object you're looking at. You know what you want to look at. You know that it contains some stuff. You need to be able to tell your environment that this is what you wish to see and interact with. And it's because the most of the controls we're looking at are rooted in a conception of a 2D linear document. But we're moving beyond that now. Because as you rightly pointed out, well, if we're just reading, in effect, if we're just reading a linear document, why don't we do it on a big flat screen? And you'd be right. So
you have to tell me what the things are. I mean, right now we do have the ability to view a title and the abstract in what we currently call the library view. So
what command do you use? So in the thing you've just described, how do you tell the environment that you want this extra information shown about this subsection? So maybe you got, because like it's not, it may be on a selection. So you've got to display that the nice part of the visual environment is you can have quite a bit of information in there. You can have some stuff toward the sides because it's not your immediate concern. Probably the stuff you're more interested in will be clustered, probably where your attention is focused, broadly in the middle of the thing.
Well, the way
you're going to do, sorry?
The way we had this was we have a virtual PDF, something that looks like that Andrew has, where you can choose in different ways to see an outline, just to see the top level. So we have kind of, in a way, and I was under the expectation we would be able to tear things off. So we'd have different things in the room. But I'm very happy for us to start experimenting with what you're talking about.
Well, the tear off is interesting, but that's doing sort of something different, because that sort of sits closer to the almost the copy metaphor. We said this is, this, I want to do something with this now, and I'm going to take it from here and do something else. Again, I don't know, maybe I'm alone in this sense of when I'm reading something, what I'm actually trying to do is to decompose the narrative is a freighted word, but trying to get to the understanding of broadly what it's about. And things like keywords and stuff don't tell me, because that's broadly what somebody else thinks it is. What I'm trying to understand is what the author was trying to communicate with me, the subject matter being done. And you don't know how far into a document you need to go before you get to the sufficient enlightenment to say you want to do something. So if we accept that we said we'll have the metadata to do this, we know all these points in the document, these objects within the document as a whole. We don't have to treat them as a linear entity, because we can do that on a 2D screen. So we don't need to be doing 2D stuff when we're in a subject like XR. So is it not feasible that we might want to effectively do a decomposition? We want to look at one or several things, and we want to see the same aspects of those. And what I'm asking is what menu you have for that. I don't mean you personally, but what we would call that, or the gestures we might use, or how we might do that, or is our view that this is a thing just not worth doing?
So we'll have to look at that on Monday, because we're out of time.